The specter of conflict is expanding across the Middle East. 2 weeks after Hamas's horrific October 7th attacks, the Israeli military has mobilized over 300,000 reservists, and we're being told they could move into the Gaza Strip any day. Now, I want to begin by introducing my guest for the evening, Iqbal Chand Malhotra, author and filmmaker who writes on geopolitics. Iqbal, welcome to the News9 Plus show.
Thank you, Sandeep.
What are you looking at, Iqbal? What does this look like to you? Post 9/11 or post 1991 Iraq war invasion of Kuwait?
Actually, it's neither. I think it's a very intriguing scenario where there's a larger game at play. And I think the puppeteers of that game reside in Beijing. And the game is about the IMEEC corridor, which is a very vital component of trade and commerce between, say, Japan and Europe. And it is going to be set up. It's already in the process of being set up. And it threatens China's dominance in the region. And it threatens the Belt and Road Initiative. And the Chinese had to destroy the IMEEC, which actually came about because of a rapprochement between the Israelis and the Saudis. And the first thing that they did was to try and discredit India by actually organizing the killing of Mr. Niger in Canada in June, and then the whole imbroglio that erupted when Mr. Trudeau tried to discredit India and claimed that India was responsible for the hit.
So you're saying that all these are interconnected? The
Absolutely.
Post-G20 meltdown that we saw with Canada, the attack, it's all aimed at the IMEEC.
The motive was to actually destroy IMEEC from being born. And also to destroy G20, because if Mr. Trudeau had actually spoken out in New Delhi against India, then there would have been no unanimous resolution, and IMEEC wouldn't have been born.
Of course.
But I think Mr. Biden steered Trudeau away from doing that, and Trudeau spoke out when he returned back to Canada. But that enabled IMEEC to be born, and then the Chinese had to go into their second gear, and which was the next country, and the target was Israel, because of the Haifa port, in which one of the corporates from this country has a very big interest in the container terminal. And the flow of traffic, rail traffic from Jebel Ali, say, or Al Fujairah, goes all the way to Haifa, and then from there the ships take over again, and the containers are loaded back on ships.
There's in fact just a small stretch of about 230 kilometers that remains to be built between Saudi Arabia and Israel.
In fact, the Arabs regard a lot of the land that is occupied by Israel, what they claim is occupied by Israel, to be Waqf lands, endowment lands, and that they want to get them back from the infidels.
In fact, we have got a beautiful map illustrating this IMEEC thing, and that last piece of the puzzle that was the rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Israel is what's holding it up, and this would have been an alternative to
it would actually enable the goods. This is Jebel Ali over here, and it enables this rail corridor to go all the way up to Haifa. In fact, the old Hijaz railway that goes from Damascus down to Medina, in Saudi Arabia, part of that is on the same track. So you only had about 230 odd kilometers left to be laid of track. And then you land up straight at Haifa, where you transship back onto container ships, and you move on to Greece. Now in Greece, Piraeus is the most obvious choice, but 60% of Piraeus is now owned by the Chinese, and the Costco shipping company owns it. So I think India was looking at one of the three other ports, so that the cargoes could be landed there and then move on the European rail network up to Germany.
Right up there, and it what cuts down about 40% of the time that it normally would take through the Red Sea.
And it also, there are two choke points here. Over here, the choke point is the Strait of Hormuz, and down here is the choke point is the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb. If you can move the map up a little bit. Down at Bab el-Mandeb, which is near Djibouti. And Djibouti is an important base for the Americans, for the French and the Chinese. And of course, this entire area of Yemen, southern Yemen, is Houthi dominated. And this is the Houthis are non-state actors of the Iranians.
Working for the Iran. So there's a whole swath of countries, Iqbal, that have been left out of the IMEEC. There's Pakistan, there's Iran, of course, Iraq, And of course,
And
China,
Turkey.
it's an alternative.
No,
and of course,
Turkey,
Turkey, yes.
Because Turkey and Greece have a ongoing conflict over the Aegean Sea and
Yes.
the economic exploitation zone.
So-
and Turkey has said that any trade between Asia and Europe has to go through the natural land gateway of Turkey.
So that's interesting you should mention the IMEEC, because right now, even as we speak, there's a lot of interest. 2 weeks after the attacks, there have been the United States, President Biden has come out very strongly to say IMEEC is still on board. Prime Minister Modi has also said it's still on the, it's not on the back burner yet. This is what we feared. But the final piece of the puzzle, Iqbal, is the peace deal between Saudi and Israel. You think the kind of violence that we are seeing now in Gaza, the Israeli retaliation, is going to put this off the back burner? I mean, it makes it hard for.
Well, you see, in Saudi Arabia,
Mohammed,
Prince Salman has been going through a lot of liberalizations.
Yes.
And he's opening up the society. And I think he's coming into conflict with the clerics in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
But with the killing of Sunni Palestinians,
Right.
I don't think he's going to be able to do anything with Israel.
Yep.
So my view is that this is a very open game.
Right.
It's an open dynamic chessboard. Nobody knows who's going to join into the fight
Right.
tomorrow. So I don't think that this corridor is going to take off for quite some time, because even if the Israelis have to degrade Hamas,
right.
it's going to take at least 6 months to be able
couple
to
of
do
months, right? And there's a lot of people who are going to die in this. I mean, sadly, the death toll, the figures are over 5,000.
That's the most interesting thing, that why did Hamas stake everything on this whole hit, on this whole episode? Why did they murder Israeli civilians and children and kidnap others?
No, it was to inflict the kind of violence to provoke a reaction.
When the fact is that there's an old biblical axiom, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
Right.
Did they think the Israelis were going to sit tight? No. But obviously someone seduced them to act.
Right.
Someone who had a greater interest behind that and actually used Hamas as a sacrificial pawn.
Right. So that phrase is very interesting, what you mentioned, that you're looking at a dynamic chessboard that's at play in the Middle East. And the Middle East has always been a dynamic chessboard for, what, 2,000 years? But of late, even more so. And I think this the spell of peace that we saw in the last decade or so, especially post 2014, I think that lulled everyone into a false sense of complacency. But the Middle East, as you can say, very clearly see, is not a place that you can take for granted, and certainly not the kind of place that you could build large infrastructure projects. Though, I mean, we are hopeful of the IMEEC coming up, but like you say, that it's off the radar for now, it seems. But the major focus for Israel right now, Iqbal, remains Hamas. As you said, it boggles the mind why they did what they did. And right now, even as we speak, Israel, the IDF, they've begun this air-launched campaign of degrading Hamas's capabilities. There's a hunt for Hamas, as we're calling it. The leadership is under the scanner of the Israelis. And we have an interesting documentary on this we put together, which talks about this hunt for Hamas. Let's take a look.
In the early morning of October 7, 2023, the world woke up to the deadliest attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Within 20 minutes, more than 3,000 missiles were fired at Israel, along with vehicle-transported incursions. With this, Hamas announced the start of Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. In a series of coordinated attacks, militants breached the Gaza-Israel barrier, slaughtering civilians in the neighboring Israeli communities and attacking military bases, resulting in a death toll of over 1,300 Israelis, including women and children. Soon after the assault, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared a state of emergency for areas within 80 kilometers of the Gaza border and pledged that Israel will win by calling for mobilization of tens of thousands of army reservists. IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, launched Operation Swords of Iron to launch an invasion of Gaza. The goal was to rescue the hostages taken to Gaza and parallelly wipe out the top political and military hierarchy of the Hamas, the Palestinian group that controls Gaza.
Their main aim is only to finish the Hamas network. Initially, they will destroy the main lifeline of Hamas, that is the tunnel services. They are the tunnel, because once they destroy all these things, then it's very easy to make them not to operate in all these northern areas. then they will go behind the top leadership. Most probably, most of the Hamas leadership who have been mastermind of all these things might be escaped or might be in the different in the other parts of world.
To find out who is Hamas and who is not Hamas is difficult. And also the Hamas is melted in the population across there. The population is not anti-Hamas. 56 or 60% in last voting supported Hamas as an organization. To say that the population will give out information that this fellow is Hamas and you can come and kill him, that is not simple. So you can kill a leader or 2 leaders or 10 leaders, it may delay their functioning for some time. The efficiency may be lost for some time. But finally another fellow will be thrown up, and that fellow will take charge of the same situation and carry it out. How many people can you keep assassinating, saying that you kill leaders? It's not so simple proposition.
As of today, the IDF has successfully neutralized 2 of Hamas's top military leadership and is determined to go after all of them one by one, starting from Mahmoud al-Zahar, also known as al-Zahar, a Palestinian politician and co-founder of Hamas. Believed to be about 60 years old, Zahar was close to Hamas founder Ahmed Yassin and has also served as foreign minister in the Hamas-dominated Palestinian Authority government.
He created $1 billion from Qatari government, which were fed into Hamas carried in suitcases and notes inside Gaza. That money which allows the fighting to take place in Gaza comes from Qatar. And last 10 years, $1 billion has gone into, brought in by this leader which sits in there.
Yahya al-Sinwar, also known as Yahya Sinwar, he is being referred to as the face of evil. He is accused of masterminding the recent Hamas attack, which left 1,300 Israelis dead. He is the current Palestinian leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. It is al-Sinwar who co-founded the security apparatus of Hamas and is considered the second most powerful figure within the Hamas.
دعها سرا يا أبا إبراهيم دعها سرا ولتتحدث عن نفسها إذا حدثت.
Mohammed Daif Ibrahim Masri, or Mohammed Daif, often referred to as Al-Daif, the guest, is a one-eyed Palestinian militant and supreme military commander of the military wing of Hamas. He is believed to be one of the masterminds behind the audacious October 7 attack. At present, his whereabouts are unknown, though he is believed to be hiding in Gaza somewhere in the maze of tunnels and is currently on top of Israel's hit list. Abu Ubaidah, one of the most ferocious Islamist Palestinian terrorists, was the person who announced that Hamas was holding dozens of Israeli soldiers captive in safe places and tunnels in the Gaza Strip. Ubaidah's actual name is not known, and neither are most of his personal details. He always is seen wearing a kafaya over his face.
إن الموعد المحدد للتهدئة قد اقتربت نهايته وإننا لن نمدد هذه التهدئة.
Ismail Abdel Salem Ahmad Hanaya, also referred to as Ismail Hanaya, is a senior political leader of Hamas and is formerly one of the 2 disputed prime ministers of the Palestinian National Authority. He is also the chairman of the Hamas Political Bureau and is the main political leader of Hamas, living in Doha, Qatar. It is he who named the Hamas terrorist attacks on October 7 Operation Al-Aqsa Flood and pledged to continue the battle to liberate his land and his prisoners. Hanaya said that the Palestinian militant factions would press on with the operation in the West Bank and Jerusalem. It will be challenging for the Israelis to target Hanaya, as footage has emerged of him celebrating the attacks with other Hamas officials at his office in Doha.
أن يكون على رأس الحركة في غزة أخ مجاهد من أسرى الحرية.
When they announced that they are going for a war, that when and they already decided, they already discussed that what will be the scenario if they go for a war against Hamas. They already know that many organizations like Hezbollah, ISIS, and many other organizations like TTP will definitely try and support them. So they already have all these inputs. But for them right now is the Hamas elimination or the Hamas network elimination is the top priority.
Whether the world will witness assassinations of these Hamas leaders or not, this will become clear in the next few days. But for now, Israeli forces are determined to bring back its citizens as well as citizens of other nations stuck in Gaza.